Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me once again is Matt Taglia, Senior Director of Emerson College Polling. Matt, thanks so much for coming back on.
Happy to be here, Brittany.
We are less than 2 months away from Election Day in New York City, and Emerson College Polling, Pix 11, and The Hill have a new poll on the Big Apple's mayoral race. It's a local race that has since garnered national attention since that shock upset in the June primary. So to start off the conversation, less than 60 days out, what is the state of the race today?
Yeah, Brittany, and this is our first poll of the general election following the primary. And it right now looks a little bit like the primary. So we have Mamdani ahead with 43%, followed by Cuomo with 28%, and then Republican Curtis Sliwa with 10%, Adams, the current sitting mayor, with 7% and 9% undecided. So this is the substantial lead for Mamdani. It's going to be tough for any of these other candidates to break out at this point.
And when you're looking at the demographics, when you break that down, what sticks out to you? Whose support is going where?
Yeah, and much like the primary, what we're seeing is that voters under the age of 50 are really propelling Mamdani here. They break for him 49% to 20% for Cuomo. Mamdani, however, also leads with those who are over the age of 50, so 39% to 33%. So a much more modest lead there, but he has broken into some of those older demographics nevertheless. Mamdani also posts a large lead with college grads and especially people with graduate degrees, PhDs, et cetera, as you might expect. And as I think we saw in some of the data from the primary, Cuomo, on the other hand, is really only competitive here with the 60 to 69 demographic of voters. They are effectively split. And that, frankly, that's a tough place to be. If I'm Cuomo, I would like to be winning those 60-year-old plus voters.
And Mamdani, I mean, is just far and away here the front runner. He's up by second place Cuomo by double digits. 9% are undecided. That's even more than Eric Adams's support. How much does that matter here, or if at all?
And I don't know that it matters much here. Like you said, that is more than Eric Adams' vote, but it would take more than that for Cuomo to take down Mamdani. If you look at the folks who say that they are very likely to vote in the general election, Mamdani has an even greater lead. He's at 56% versus 27% for Cuomo. Cuomo leads with those voters who aren't too sure. They're somewhat likely to vote. He leads there 34% to 27%. So, a lot of this vote here is locked in. 77% of the vote, they say that they will definitely support their candidate. And we see that Mamdani gets the bulk of that.
Matt, this is a really interesting group of candidates, right? You have former Governor Andrew Cuomo, Mayor Eric Adams, both leaders in New York, and they, while in office, faced their own set of scandals. Then you have Curtis Sliwa. He's a Republican, founder of the Guardian Angels, but he's a Republican in a deeply blue city. And then you have Zohran Mamdani, a New York State Assembly member who, until that June primary and right before, did not have any type of national profile. So when you're looking at these candidates, how do their approval ratings stack up to one another?
Apart for Mamdani, by and large, voters are not in love with these candidates. So Mamdani, we see 48% have a favorable rating of him versus 34% who have an unfavorable rating. You look a little bit further down and we see Andrew Cuomo with 36% favorable versus 51% unfavorable. So just pausing on that number for a second, a majority have an unfavorable view of Cuomo. So that is, again, a tough rock to crawl out from under. Then we get a little bit further and we see President Trump, just as a test here to give a baseline, 31% favorable versus 64% unfavorable. And then incumbent Mayor Eric Adams, again, 26% favorable versus 61% unfavorable. So actually a worse favorability rating than President Trump.
That's not good to be the incumbent mayor. You were a Democrat, and you're now running as an independent, and you're running for mayor again, and in arguably one of the bluest cities in this country, your approval rating is worse than President Trump's. But when you're looking at this race, it seems like there's two groups, right? Mamdani's one, and then the three other candidates are all lumped together. If I am a voter in New York City that's voting for Cuomo, Adams, or Sliwa, is my vote interchangeable, do you think, based on these numbers?
Yeah, and it's tough to say that the vote is interchangeable. I think that the most locked in vote that isn't Mamdani here is that Curtis Sliwa vote. As the Republican nominee in the race, he does have this built-in support that I don't think will disappear. Adams, on the other hand, doesn't really have that support. He's running, not only as an independent, but a horribly unpopular incumbent mayor. So that support, that 7% support, that's not as locked in. We saw that in some of the tests that we ask about whether folks will change their mind or not. Those Adam voters aren't really sure. Sliwa voters, on the other hand, that's a different story. So I don't think that these candidates are necessarily interchangeable, but there is perhaps something to be said for Andrew Cuomo. We look at the head-to-head race between just Mamdani and Andrew Cuomo. Again, this is not a real-world test because presumably these other candidates' names will be on the ballot. They won't be dropping out. But in this sort of Goldilocks scenario for Cuomo, he's still behind. Mamdani 47, Cuomo 40. That's a tough place to be. And I'm not sure that he could consolidate the vote even if he could.
And we know that this is an off-year election. It seems like based on these numbers, voters are more excited for Mamdani. They're excited to get out there and cast their vote for him. It seems like based on the approval rating that if you are a Cuomo voter, I'm not saying all of them, you're almost holding your nose and then casting the vote with the other hand. It's an off-year election. Do you think that matters here for turnout?
I think it will matter for turnout. Now, this is an off-year election. However, it is the first time in many years that a general election has been this competitive or this exciting in New York City for mayor. So I do think that turnout will be substantial. It will likely eclipse past years. It will probably look a little bit like the primary vote, but I think that there will be a higher turnout than in the primary on both sides. But I think that there is certainly, based on those results, based on the results that we see in this poll of folks who say that they are very likely to turn out, I think that we will see that momentum build, most likely behind Mamdani. Who knows? Cuomo might be able to pull out something in the end, but I do expect turnout to be up, especially for an off-year election like this.
And I want to get back to that Goldilocks scenario, if you would, because there seems to be a question mark looming over this race of, will it be a 4-person race versus will it be a 2-person race? It seems like President Trump wants it to be a 2-person race. Cuomo would benefit from it being a 2-person race. Sliwa and Adams, though, they have both said in no uncertain terms they are not dropping out of this race. How does the race change? I mean, it obviously gives Cuomo the upper hand if the other two drop out, but I mean, he's still trailing Mamdani, right?
He is still trailing Mamdani by 7 points. So again, like you said, Goldilocks scenario here, these names are still going to be on the ballot, even if Sliwa and Adams drop and endorse Cuomo. I don't know how much that helps. I don't know if that would necessarily bring him up to where he needs to be. He gains the most in that head-to-head match from voters over the age of 50, which is what I would expect and what I think Cuomo needs to see. But he also needs to cut in on some of that under 50 vote, which just isn't happening. And if the electorate looks like it did in the primary, which it very well may look somewhat like that electorate, that spells disaster even for a Mamdani versus Cuomo head-to-head match.
And I want to get to some of those top issues facing Big Apple voters, one of them being safety. And that's something that Cuomo's really running on. So are Sliwa and Adams. Do the voters in New York City perceive their community as safe?
And I wouldn't say that they necessarily perceive their community as safe, but 19% say that their community is safer than it was 4 years ago. 39%, though, say that it is less safe, and 42% say that it is no different from what it was 4 years ago. Now, interestingly here, Mamdani leads among all these groups. So even among the folks who say that it's less safe than it was 4 years ago, Mamdani is ahead. Adams does slightly better with the safe crowd, the folks who say that it's safer than it was 4 years ago. I suppose that checks out as part of his mayoralship. But yeah, there still is not much to gain here for any of the candidates, I'd say. Safety doesn't seem to be the top issue for these folks. And Mamdani only stands to benefit here, as we've seen in so many other places in this poll.
We've heard candidates talk about things like affordability and housing in New York. What are the other top issues, and how do voters feel about them now?
Yeah, and we asked this question a little bit differently. We asked about top issues in the United States, and seeing as how this has become such a nationalized race, it's interesting the results here. So the economy is the top issue with 27%. Threats to democracy, second place issue with 25%. Healthcare and housing coming in third with 11%. Now, as you might expect, Mamdani leads, especially as just the leader in the poll. He leads with all of these voters who say that it's their top issue. But the economy, I thought, was interesting. For one, 40% versus Cuomo, 31% among those folks who say the economy is their top issue. So Mamdani, a self-described democratic socialist, is leading on the economy here. You look a little bit further down in threats to democracy, I thought was also interesting. Mamdani is winning 68% of those voters who say it's their top issue. Cuomo just 17%. So again, as this is such a nationalized race, I think that in these numbers, the voters here are clearly sending a message, and Mamdani is the beneficiary of it.
I live in New York and I live uptown. I come downtown every day. I cross the river to get to work. So I really traipse in and out across the city. And I think it's really interesting that we went from it's Cuomo's race to lose to now it's Mamdani on top. And I think you really saw that based on seeing different flyers, different volunteers, different stickers all over the city. I mean, there's just so much Mamdani stickering and flyering. You barely see any other stickers or any type of poster for any other candidate. Do you think, as we sit here right now, less than 2 months from the election, that it's now Mamdani's race to lose?
I do think right now it is Mamdani's race to lose. Like you said, there is an energy there. There is news coverage there, media coverage of his campaign. And, I think we saw it really break through in the primary. I think that energy has continued through the summer, frankly. Like you said, you're seeing it on the ground. We're seeing it in the media. We're seeing it all over the place. Whereas Cuomo's campaign has sort of struggled to find its grounding, really resonate with voters, and especially on some of the top issues of the day. And he's failed to land some of these attacks on Mamdani, seemingly. So I do think it's his race to lose. It's not to say that it's over. We've certainly seen candidates come back from a lead like this, but it is an uphill battle for any of these other candidates. Absent Sliwa and Adams dropping out, this is very much Mamdani's race.
And we've seen October surprises in national races, maybe more high-profile cases. In a race like this that has national attention, but it is local, what are your thoughts on an October surprise in general? Do you think there's something that could be that big that shakes up this race to its core in a month?
There could be. I think that the Cuomo campaign and others surrounding the Cuomo campaign will certainly continue to dig into Mamdani's past, try to find something that is either incriminating or scandalous. Whether they'll be successful in that remains to be seen. And I do think that even if they find something that receives a lot of media attention, it's gonna be tough to cut through the narrative here and the energy that's on the ground, as you've seen, and what we're seeing in the polling. And that is that these Mamdani voters are simply more energized than Cuomo voters. And that is a really tough thing to come back from if you're Cuomo.
Matt, I really appreciate you joining me once again and breaking down the numbers and the polling surrounding this race, because it's certainly an interesting one that we will keep our eye on until November. Matt Taglia, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks, Brittany. Anytime.